South San Francisco is celebrating the historic centennial of the 19th Amendment, and I'm all in. It's such an important milestone to celebrate, especially in an election year. The right to vote is at the core of our republic. It took 144 years after the United States Declaration of Independence to ratify the 19th Amendment and extend the right to vote to women. It took women of color 189 years to secure meaningful suffrage with the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was an ugly and brutal battle. The 19th Amendment passed the House and Senate, and then anti-suffrage groups mobilized to continue their pressure campaign in states. In my office, I have two documents. One's a framed original copy of the 1871 petition to Congress from suffragists Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, urging Congress to give women the right to vote. The second document is from 1917 and from the National Association opposed to women's suffrage. They were all women arguing that the 19th Amendment would be an official endorsement of pestering as a national policy, that it would give every radical woman the right to believe that she could get anything she wanted passed by just pestering. That same year, 1917, the National Woman's Party picketed the White House to pressure President Woodrow Wilson. No one had ever picketed the White House before, and the women were met with hostility from angry mobs. They were yelled at, spat at, peppered with rotten eggs, and even beaten. Some were even sexually assaulted. On November 14, 1917, after being arrested, a group of 33 women were met at the prison with guards with clubs and choked them and kicked them, and one was stabbed between her eyes. They were fed rotten food and denied medical treatment. When some women went on a hunger strike, they were force-fed with tubes through their noses. This night of terror, as it was called, has been forgotten. But most Americans need to remember that, need to remember the hard-fought battles that were necessary to get women the right to vote on August 26th, Equality Day. You know, mainstream science at the time said that if women had the right to vote, there would be infertility and inferior brains, and that they only had a finite amount of energy that they needed to use to procreate. An MIT Harvard professor put an editorial in the New York Times and said that nothing good could come of that. Almorth Wright, a British immunologist, said, you know, post-menopausal women had mental disorders. They certainly couldn't vote. I want to talk to you about two men that helped get us the right to vote. One was Harry Burns, who was 24 years old. He had been the earliest elected representative in the state of Tennessee. And as the vote came up, and this was August of 1920, and he was clear that he was going to vote against women's suffrage. He wore a red rose, which was significant for those who were opposed to women getting the right to vote. And then that day, he received a letter from his mother, Phoebe Byrne, who said, "You must vote for a woman's right to vote." And so he did. And it was his vote that gave women suffrage in this country. So we herald State Representative Harry Byrne. Final person I want to talk about is Charlie Parkhurst. He was a stagecoach driver. He was called One-Eyed Charlie because he got kicked by a horse once and lost one of his eyes. And he was well-liked, very good at what he did, and he voted in 1868, and he died in 1879. He was buried in Pioneer Cemetery in Salinas. Now you may be wondering, why am I telling you this story? Well, Charlie was really Charlotte Parkhurst. And it wasn't until he died and they were preparing his body for his funeral that they found out that Charlie was really Charlotte. And since he had voted in 1868, he became the first woman to vote in the United States. So as we celebrate this centennial, it's really important for us to recognize that we have no laurels to sit on. That in fact, we still need the Equal Rights Amendment, that we still have a pay gap that exists based on our gender, that we don't have universal child care like every other industrialized country in the world has. And there's so much more to do. But it's also worth this opportunity to sit back for a moment and to realize what our founding mothers and sisters did to get us this very, very special right. And how there are always going to be people, no matter what it is that we are trying to change or promote, that are going to try and make sure we don't get it. So let's remember this history and realize that the suffragists of yesteryear did everything in their power to give us this right to vote. And we are the suffragists of this generation. And we want our youngsters and our grandchildren to look back at us and realize that we were suffragists of making sure that we had true equality in this country. Bless you all.